Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to see the interest that Shintoism, above all, Earth Day, I want to insist, and Shintoism has awoken. My name is Ivona Ward, but you can recognize, as Pascal was mentioning, I come from a different country, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, but I consider myself Irish after 13 years living in Ireland. All right. I have been volunteering in your Acropolis for now close to 20 years. And I'm one of the instructors in this center in Dublin. Now, why did I choose to talk about Shintoism? Because today we will enter into this ancient tradition that is today present in Japan. The name Shintoism its meaning really is the way of gods. And it's very interesting because we have spoken earlier, it is a religion, but its roots are far beyond of what we have in Shintoism today. And what is quite essential, what is quite important is that it captures the mindset, the values, the imagination, the intuition of civilizations or traditions that are far beyond of Japan as we know it today. Okay. It is also a tradition that has been influenced by ideology of the state. So it has many different facets and layers. However, today I'm going to focus really on those most original ideas behind it, because today we want to learn from it. Okay. Why is it important to learn from the culture like such, or from ancient traditions as Shintoism? Well, today we are here because probably we feel responsible, or we have a deep need, to approach our relationship and connection with nature differently. We probably also recognize that the way we are living, the way we are acting today, it cannot be sustained or continued. And in traditions like this, we can find different angles and inspiration to see things differently, and perhaps to start questioning the mindset of today, of which we carry as well some of it, to start cracking down things that prevent us to live in harmony, in a living harmony with the world that surrounds us, isn't it? And any human being, in reality, is impacted by this relationship with nature. When we break this connection, it is not only that one person is impacted, all of us are impacted, because it is incredibly important for us. I would like to ask you a question, okay? What does it mean to have a relationship with nature? How do you define that? To connect to nature. There's no right or wrong, I always insist, but what does it mean?
For me, I think you listen to nature, because if you look for the nature, everything we have, like chemical or created, there is some aspect of inspiration of nature.
Mm-hmm.
For example, for I don't know the name, helicopter, do you know in English? Helicopter. They look some flies and understand it's possible. No? So everything you look in the natural place, learn, and you can do for medicine or other things. No? We learn off the plants and we create the medicine. We separe the things from the natural. So I think I have been tribal, like indigenous, like community.
Tribal communities, yes. Yeah.
In Brazil. So it's beautiful to see the people, how they work with the natural and how they live with the nature. So I think this, when you listen and understand about the feelings and the teachers, the knowledge, because the natural show for us the problems and the solutions.
It's very interesting. It's the problems and solutions, yes. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd say we just have a relationship with nature by default because we exist here, so we treat nature a certain way and it treats us a certain way, and there's a give and a take balance there.
Yeah.
And then individually, you can spend time in nature, listen to nature, learn from nature, take some feelings from nature.
Okay. Very good, very good. Anybody would like to add anything else of their own reflection and experience?
It can be a spiritual experience.
It can be a spiritual experience, yeah.
And it's all inspiring, so it stops you thinking and brings you into the present moment.
It's interesting, interesting. All these elements, and I do think that our experiences can be much deeper, but we all can recognize that we have a certain relationship with nature. Now, we are faced with a particular problem that we have today is we live in the cities that are like concrete blocks, isn't it? Yeah. In Ireland, we are still quite lucky because there is a lot of greenery around. But if we think about it, is the environment that we live in does not necessarily allow for a lot of contact. Sometimes we think that way, isn't it? But I want you to stop and think a little bit about this, because when we think mostly, not always, when we think of connection with nature, it kind of brings us back to, we feel connected to nature, or we are connected to nature once we are in the undisturbed nature, when we are far away from the noises and the grayness of the city, when we are on a hike or walk in a forest, on a high mountain. But that also represents a little bit of our mentality, that our consciousness of nature is highly dependent on our ability to be in the middle of it, right? Which, as we know, through the lifestyles that we have today, is not always possible. So I would like to put this into question a little bit, because when we are not in nature, we seem to be a little bit disconnected. It's a little bit distant from us. However, if we stop and think, we seem to forget that the sky is always above us, isn't it? Yeah. And here in Shintoism, we find a teaching or a concept that is incredibly powerful. And it's called Wa, W-A. Don't worry, you can research this all on the internet. I'm going to use some of the Japanese terms. But what it means is benign harmony. So good harmony. And it says that this is one of the core principles that we find in nature and in the human being. It's inherent in us as it is inherent in the world that we live in. Very interesting. This expands, and they say also this embraces everything. It embraces all living universe. And they call this concept Iya. If somebody speaks Japanese, please raise a hand and correct my pronunciation. It's I-E, is the spelling, but what it means really is enhanced household, extended household. So it is, and it goes as far, it is not only us, it is not only plants, mountains, it also reaches out to our ancestors that are not anymore with us. It reaches out as well to the divine beings as well. So it is our universe is our household. And that's the mentality that we start developing. Okay? Because what they say is when state of Va, or this benign harmony, is broken, the societies, the collective, the world, the human being falls into chaos. And I think that intuitively we understand this very well. I don't think that we need to explain this particularly. Now, we all know that in order to maintain and sustain a different way of living, okay, or better said, to develop a more sustainable living that is ecological in nature, requires a certain shift in our modern quasi values, okay? Because we live in a deeply materialistic times. This is not a criticism, this is a statement. It is, we live also in the world that is very utilitarian. We're very transactional with everything we do, with each other, with the world that we live in. And it's a certain type of mindset that, if we stop and think, we all are a little bit influenced by. Because we all have a tendency, isn't it, to seek the convenience of things. That is when we are in a transactional mindset. However, if we are seeking to improve the relationship we have with the world that we live in, ecologically, socially, spiritually, it doesn't matter, it is important to say that no change like such can happen without an inherent change in the human being, without the change of a mindset or the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves, and the way we set the priorities for our living. Okay? Confucius, who is a famous Chinese philosopher, who also has a tremendous influence on Japanese culture and tradition, is, I'm paraphrasing here, he said, we can teach people by edicts, by laws, which is largely what happens today. What happens? They avoid it. Interestingly, yeah, but if we teach them through virtue or the principles of life that are ethical and good, if we teach them the natural order, they will develop honorability and they will develop respect, which is in reality what we are seeking as a school of philosophy. Because any change of a habit of living really requires a certain discipline and requires a certain persistence, isn't it? Yeah. What they're saying is it requires a certain effort, naturally, and an effort to really give up and sacrifice that which breaks the benign harmony with the world that we live in. So this is important. This is important because to give up something that disturbs the harmony of Va is what is necessary if we are to improve the relationship with the world and nature that we live in. And this act of will and generosity can only be done with heart. In a way that is repeated, in the way that it becomes a way of living, that in a way that we give up of some of our excesses in order to maintain harmony. Because we all know harmony is broken by excess, isn't it? And in reality, if we learn from nature and if we learn from different traditions, is what is it that we are seeking in the human being is the ability to find that balance within oneself that is not falling into excess. It's called the conscious action. Okay. In Japan, in Japanese tradition, this is very important because they see themselves, okay, or actually us, everyone, the human being, as the children of nature. Nature is a mother and a father. It's a beautiful sentiment, isn't it? It is a master and an educator. You mentioned the aspect of it. And above all, it is intelligent and alive because it's imbued by the spirit of Kami. And Kami is an important. And therefore, when we are in contact with nature, there is a certain awe towards nature. There is a certain wonder. And there is a poem by an unknown poet that is short, but it says, unknown to me what resided here. Tears flow from a sense of unworthiness and gratitude. We can have a sense with that. Picture, this is, I think, the end of the presentation. It is. It doesn't matter. You can go forward because there are certain images that just accompany that. If you go further, yeah, that's it. That's it. So when we are in a face of nature, we can develop a sense of wonder and gratitude of the world, and this is one of the biggest characteristics of Shintoism. Okay, it is this feeling of awe in nature that I find in trees, in the mountains, in the water, in the rising of the moon, in a children's play. It's very important. In the flowers, in the villages, and so on and so forth. But as you can imagine, this is something that comes from within. I would like to propose a simple practice of wonder, if you are open to it. It's very simple. It does require courage, but if you just turn to a person that is closest to you and just face them, yeah, and look them deep into the, yeah. Now, it's if you can do it so that you can sustain the eye contact without being uncomfortable. Yeah. And now, can I suggest? Yeah. Can I suggest that we do this in silence, because we don't need to get anguished or anxious about this. It is a very human act. And just take a minute to look deeply into each other's eyes and see what you find out. I know that we are strangers. That's good. Yeah. I said it requires courage. Yeah, I can join here. Yeah. We take a deep breath, in and out, and we finish. Were you able to connect? Okay. Yeah? Yeah? Good. So if I can bring you back from the fascination of looking each other into the eyes, have you experienced wonders? A wonder, a sense of wonder, of an awe, because although we don't know each other, there is something that is very beautiful in the eye of another person. Okay? As you can imagine, one of the biggest challenges that we have in developing is this heartfelt belonging to nature. Okay? This is in our day-to-day lives. Okay? Because to develop this is important, because it would allow us to express ourselves and to act in the world perhaps more kindly and more responsibly in the smallest things of life. We have done the workshops on cleaning, making our cleaning materials, but also how to mend our clothes. And there are small acts of concentration and action that is actually helping us to express a value that is deeper. And imagine if we can do that in many different ways. Because we are children of nature, nature is inside of us. So Alan did an exercise with us where we just connected with that inner science in us, that is to connect with that which is natural to us. So we can enter into the world, we can connect with the world and with nature with a certain sense of awe and wonder. Because what is the alternative? Alternative is distraction, being weighed over by life, being exhausted all the time. But we as a human being have a tremendous potential to express enthusiasm, a will to improve the world, an idealism, a sense of belonging, sense of love, a justice, which are tremendous capacities that we carry inside. But one of the characteristics of that is we need to choose to get outside of the shell and restrictions and the chains of this selfish, self-centered, and self-pitying mindset. I hope that it didn't offend anybody. And if we have that sense of consciousness, it is very easy to find the beauty, to find the sense of awe in a tree, in the sky above, in the eyes of another human being, in a flower. As we can see, we can access this sense of connection with nature, with everything that we have inside of us, so that the world that we live in becomes a mystery. I don't know how to explain it. Something that rejuvenates us and doesn't wear us down. Without developing this conviction of why and this sense of belonging, it is pretty much insurmountable to overcome the challenges in developing a more ecological way of living, a sustained way of living. Why? Because without this sense of direction, our decisions are always going to be overshadowed by the search for comfort or the easy way out. I don't know if you've noticed that. Because in a way, what we are fighting is really our lack of direction, our lack of vision, or perhaps our forgetfulness. I don't know what it is. For different people, it's a different thing. And in Shintoism, it is, I want to bring us back, they say it's a path of nature. And what they're trying to do is to connect us with the principles, universal principles of nature that in a human being express themselves in living virtues, the practice of virtues or ethics, right? And through developing a moral strength so that we can live according to what we have decided to do. It's very simple. It's a great practice. And the way they said in Shintoism is what breaks benign harmony is impurity of the heart ourselves, or the inability to do what we recognize as good. And we know, that it's not always so simple. Today we would say it's like one lacks character, isn't it? When we do something that has a negative impact on something, on someone, on another being, we say it's due to a lack of character. In our words, in our way of speaking, we can touch upon a very important practice in the daily life. One would say one is inconsiderate, no? Or one is lazy, or one is indifferent, okay? Because when we don't care for how our actions impact others, we are in a way indifferent, inconsiderate, right? And but if we gain or restore a little bit this idea of extended household, we start realizing that it does matter what we do. It does matter how we think, how we act, how we feel, and how we express all of that, the inner reality within us towards others. And this is why the strengths or moral qualities is a path of us to recreate that harmony. Because when we act with love, when we choose discipline over indiscipline, we can overcome barriers that are within us to live harmoniously with those values and those principles that we have chosen to live by. Now, this quality of heart, this is one of the shrines in Shintoism. In these great shrines and small shrines of Shintoism, they're represented by 3 objects, sacred objects. And one says that relate us to these qualities that help us purify our heart, okay? So we can express the deeper, more profound inner dimension or authentic dimension of who we are, that which is natural in us. And they say one is mirror, and in reality is the ability and capacity of a human being to mirror the order of the heavens, of the sky, of that which we can consider as the noblest that we can perceive. Ideals in a different way. And they say without a fault. It's a higher order. But then we also need a keen sword. That's another object that says that in order to manifest virtues, in order to act ethically, philosophically, spiritually, well, we need courage. Without courage, we cannot overcome a habit. We cannot confront ourselves, question ourselves. We cannot go towards wisdom. We cannot recreate harmony in the most difficult situations of life. And all of this is crowned by a jewel necklace, which in reality is benevolence. So, as you can see, those qualities are incredibly important for us to develop a pure heart, a pure essence, and in a human being. Which is why in Shintoism we often find purification rituals. Okay? And purification rituals in that context is usually they purify themselves with water, they cleanse, etc., before they enter the sacred space. That's in pretty many religions, it's quite present. But if we step back and philosophically, what can we learn from it? Because we are not in Shintoism, we are not in Japan, we are not visiting shrines, etc. So what does that mean for us in a day-to-day? There is a certain necessity to purify ourselves from our inconsistencies and our impurities every day. And imagine that there is a need that we rebuild ourselves every day. Every morning that we get up is that we are reborn again. It is that we remind ourselves, why are we here? What is the purpose of my life? Where am I going? Where do I come from? It is a great practice of recreating the inner order. And for that, we need to purify. And how do we do that? It's often simpler than we assume, okay, than we think. Because to purify our mind is to develop an act of reflection daily. It is to be able to learn from the events of life and to kind of remove the ideas that are not according to the principles of life. We have many of those. We have a black and white thinking. We don't always see others in their true light. We don't always see ourselves. We are judgmental, blah, 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 blah. So I leave it to your own discretion to understand. Because that reflection will help us direct our life. But without the practice of that which we reflected upon, nothing moves. And this is where it's important, is that which I recognize, let us say, is a mistake, I need to correct. I need to find a way to correct what I thought I didn't do as I should, as I ought to, according to my consciousness, okay? And here in philosophy, it is introduced this idea of a test, that daily we have to test ourselves to break through the limitations of my selfishness, of my ignorance, of my indifference, of my laziness, etc. So daily, and this is what Monica was saying earlier in the talk, this heroic myth, it is to purify ourselves in action so that we can correct some of these inconsistencies that we have. And in this way, we develop moral strength, the moral character. Yeah? And now, what we find, again, in this vision of nature, as I said, it is alive, living, intelligent. They say it's imbued by kami. I don't know if you have come across this term, but kami is a spirit. But the different way of understanding of this is kami is the higher part of things. Okay? It is alive that animates and overflows ordinary objects. It is giving them significance. And according to Japan, kami is in everywhere in Japan, in the world, and they honor this connection. So kami is also the mystical fire of wisdom that fills wisdom. Kami is also a magical fire of a fireplace that heats and protects the family and protects those who are departed. Kami is also a luminous arc of a samurai sword. Okay, it's a very beautiful. Kami crowns all objects of nature. So, like the mountain Fuji, which we are all probably familiar with, is a abode of a kami. It is also concentrated in certain rocks, in certain caves, etc. And one can also activate it through certain relationships with things. Okay, it is something that is sacred, that is essential. It is vital. as well. And it is that which encourages. It's very beautiful. Different way to understand it is the good, as Plato calls it. Okay. And in popular terms, people would also consider something that is beneficial to them. It's also kami. So it is a very wide term. For instance, when the fire is good, that heats the cold place. Okay. Do you know when somebody says to you at a particular moment in your time that enlightens your understanding, whether you like it or not, that is also kami. Okay. It is what we can say that kami is that which is the best in all of things. And if I connect it with that wonder that inspires a philosophical search, is searching for the best of things. Okay? And this is how that brings us. I also mentioned that nature is a master. It contains certain intelligence that what philosophically we are seeking to understand, so we can live according to the principles of life, right? That create harmony. Okay, and in some traditions, in some teachings, nature was considered the book of wisdom. Okay, it is from her that we can learn to know how to be and how to act wisely. Mm-hmm. Or how to act in a way that brings us in connection with in relationship with other things, without breaking those relationships unintentionally, without creating a negative impact. And this is an inner effort of the individual who wants and chooses to create that harmony within. There is a legend about Buddha who was meditating, and in his preparation to give a sermon, he sat some time in silence, and at one point he lifted a flower. And at that moment he was illuminated. Okay? And at that moment he gave the flower wreath sutra, or the teaching, to the rest. And here we recognize this art of a flower to speak beyond words, to teach beyond words. It is also this aspect of awe. But this is not only Eastern traditions that we find this sentiment towards nature. Probably you have heard that philosophy is the word that has been coined by Pythagoras. And he famously said that I am not wise, I'm a lover of wisdom that is inherent in nature. I am philo, lover, or seeker, sophos, of wisdom. Sophos is I'm a seeker of wisdom, of that which I don't have, but I see and recognize in the intelligence of that living organism or nature. Confucius captured this mentality in this idea of search for natural order of things. He called it Li. It is where everything has its place that corresponds to it according to their actions in nature. In the famous Oracle of Delphi, you remember the quote that we often kind of say here, is know yourself and you will know the laws that govern the universe. And this is very important. This mentality has always been with us. And for some reason that we have listened before as well, we have lost it a little bit. But it's very important. Because for us to go back to that mentality, we need to cross the doors or the sacred gateways, which is Tori, here symbolized by Tori. But in reality is to cross the doors of our consciousness that brings us to a different dimension or perspective of life, okay? In which we can connect with, enter into that which is essential, which is alive, which is sacred. It's a different proposition altogether. So to conclude, because we don't have a lot of more time, it is, the reality is, without, I don't think that we're going to dispute on this one, that we can always do more. We are not here to say to anybody, this is what you need to do and how to do it, because what is important is when we connect with these natural values of living, we're going to find a path to choose what is our responsibility, what is our duty. And the measure doesn't really matter, as long as we do what we recognize we can do in the circumstances that we are at. If we can do it together with others, connect, fantastic, because that's where we start creating an impact. And we start creating a culture that is not anymore so driven by comfort and by materialism and utilitarianism, but we create a culture that is inspired by that which is the most beautiful in a human being and by the awe of the world that we live in that is alive, to which we have a responsibility. Because this mentality requires of us to build a more continuous relationship with nature. And that which is natural in us, because this will allow us to manifest that which is natural in us more, continuously. So I'm lacking a word. I was trying to find a different word, but more continuously, okay? And therefore, it will allow us to rebuild that harmony, that balance between us and the world that we live in a continuous way. And this matters through time, isn't it? Without a sense that we are losing something. This is important. Because one of the difficulties that we have, but if I do this, then I have to give up of this. But step back, and if you gain a little bit of distance and a little bit of perspective, that which we are giving up is not that which is in harmony with our values. So why do we give it the priority? So we need to question our choices, our decisions, and our actions. And this is this idea of sacrifice. It is a beautiful idea, is that I sacrifice something of that transactional in me, of that which is comfortable in me, in order to express that which is more profound and more authentic, so that we can create relationships that are more meaningful with the world that we live in and with others. The other thing that I think is important to bring ourselves back to is this idea to connect with nature in everything we do. It is more that we are fighting our forgetfulness, because to connect with nature, we need a moment of silence to enjoy it. We can experience it as we have the breeze on our cheek, a cold breeze that wakes us in the morning, in a drop of rain or in the sunshine. We can experience it in a conversation with another human being, but it requires of our presence and of our choice. And it is not something that is material, I can say. It is not something that depends on the circumstances of life. No, it is a state of mature consciousness, perhaps, of more awakened perspective, that creates a sense of belonging. When you have a good friend, when a good friend is away, far away, do you lose the connection with that friendship? No, you call them. It's very beautiful, right? And so here we need to call inside of ourselves so that we don't forget to connect with that which is natural in life. Why? Because if we can create that sense and consciousness of belonging, we can create solidarity. If we can create solidarity, we can experience love. And if we can know how to love, we are going to find the wonder in everything that surrounds us, in the most beautiful and most tempting situations of life. And that's wisdom. It is to know how to be and how to act and how to take responsibility in a most natural way, because it's an expression of that which is the best in us. So I will conclude it with that. Thank you.